back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and this is a breakdown of Invincible Season 3, its finale titled, I Thought You'd Never Shut Up. This finale was awesome. I love the small details in animation, and Conquest and the whole Jeffrey Dean Morgan, aka Negan versus Steven Yeun's Glenn brought back some triggering memories. So with no further ado, let's get into it and break down all those little details that you might have missed, and maybe answer the question, what the hell that demon guy is doing at the end of the finale. But first, be sure to check out nerdride.shop where you can find the latest and greatest in New Rockstars merch. Right now, we got some designs inspired by Daredevil Born Again, like this Daredevil Punisher face-off shirt. We also got merch for the Fantastic Four. I'm wearing merch for the Fantastic Four right now. Look at that, it's the big guy that eats our planets. We also got merch for Star Wars and a ton of other fandoms. Support the channel and check out nerdride.shop. Okay, let's get into this finale. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes launching your own website a breeze. Unlike other episodes, there's no invincible gag before the title card. The title card goes from yellow on black or a very dark gray to a fluorescent green reminding us of Angstrom to red and light blue to finally light gray on white, the final colors being those of Conquest. As a reminder from last episode, Conquest is voiced by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who also plays Negan on The Walking Dead, who, yes, bashed in Glenn's head with a barbed wire baseball bat. So this should be all triggering to you if you stop watching The Walking Dead like me after that scene. Some people never forget. This episode picks up right where episode 7 left off, with Mark and Conquest flying at one another, fist extended, ready to throw down. The force of the impact sends out a shockwave that blows the glass out of the windows of the already destroyed buildings and blasts onlookers off their feet. I love any time Mark fights a Viltrumite, they always end up landing these blows that are just so damn hard, they make a giant hole in the ground. It's like a crater. Conquest then says this.
Right about now, Anissa would be telling you how the Viltrum Empire would turn this wretched planet into a utopia. I'll tell you no such thing. If
Anissa was a good cop, then Conquest would definitely be a bad cop. And he doesn't want Mark to surrender, he wants to beat Mark to death. Compared to his fight in season 1 with his dad and season 2 with Anissa, Mark is doing such a better job in this fight. I think if the past season finales have taught us anything to be assured of, it's that they'll always end the season with a Viltrumite fight. So maybe in the 4th season, we should expect, you know, another Viltrumite to show up, or multiple. Side note, Conquest then has this insane line that Jeffrey Dean Morgan is really just eating up.
I'm not here to spread the greatness of the Viltrum Empire. I'm here because I enjoy this. See, to me, there is no greater pleasure than feeling the warmth of my fists drenched in blood.
That motherfucker ain't here to play. He didn't come to play games with you, Mark. They think I'm fine to save the day, but I'm really just here to fight. I love Conquest. He's a horrible person. I get it. I recognize that. But the line reads this man has is insane. And if that wasn't diabolical enough, Mark takes the fight into space. Then this bitch blows a blood bubble and turns it into a heart. Then he waits to freeze it and it shatters. And Mark's like, what the hell is going on? Mark gets in a lot of good blows, thankfully, but Conquest is still very cocky and hits Mark with one punch that blows him right back down. Back at Mark's house, Oliver's trying to jump into the fray. The fact that Debbie is letting Oliver even go shows how worried she is about Mark. And Paul tries to make Debbie feel better by saying Mark and Oliver have been in these situations before, but she says, not like this. And she's right, because this dude is a lot stronger than Nolan was. You can also see the Korean wedding ducks are back. Last time I saw them, I didn't see them and I acknowledged it, but they're also still not facing each other. We see this kind of like snow falling. I believe this is ash from the burning buildings, and Mark's blood does that Jurassic Park quake move, and Conquest is really that bitch. Oliver arrives moments before the city buildings topple, and Mark is thrown through a building, smashing and igniting a tank truck. This fight, someone please stop it. Conquest encourages Mark to keep fighting, mainly because he wants to keep beating him. He loves this violence. Shamelessly, I do as well. I love that Oliver comes in talking shit just to get yanked upside down. Nice try, that just pisses Conquest off even more. Mark tires himself out, wailing on Conquest, and exhausts himself like we've never seen before, and Conquest is still barely bleeding at this point. There are a couple points in these fights where Conquest acknowledges Eve and Mark's endurance and stamina. Now that I'm really thinking about it, Mark trained more in like strength, speed, and combat than in patience and endurance. So when it comes to pacing himself during combat enough to survive, he hasn't really done that, which makes sense because he's stronger than anyone on this planet. Viltrumites train with other Viltrumites on Viltrum. They're able to conquer planets eventually. Mark is trained by Cecil. This is a bigger discussion for another day, because I think that's also why Conquest loves fighting Mark. It's new, it's sloppy, it's uncoordinated, and he's built with surprises. He's beyond a perfect Viltrumite or an unready planet and an army. He's he's just new. At the Pentagon, we learn that Cecil has tasked D.A. Sinclair with making Reanimen out of the fallen Invincible variants. We can see Flax and Invincible on one of the tables. He was the Invincible that attacked the Pentagon last episode and was stopped by Cecil, Donald, and a bunch of Reanimen. I think the other variant is maybe Retro Invincible, who Rex Splode killed. Sinclair is having issues making the Invincible Reanimen because their tissue is just so dense. And I think that's Bulletproof Invincible. You can see on the farthest table on this shot, based on the circles on the shoulders of his uniform. Bulletproof Invincible was also killed by the Reanimen after entering the Pentagon in the last episode. Eve finally wakes up in the GDA hospital to familiar sounds of her awful parents fighting, and immediately she's worried about Mark. We learn she's been knocked out for almost a week now, and in her rush to help Mark, she reveals to her parents that he is invincible. She can't walk, but she's ready to fight. While beating the piss out of Mark, Conquest mentions that he knows Nolan. He also tells Mark that Nolan has been executed, and I don't think he's necessarily lying to Mark. I think Conquest thinks that Nolan is actually dead because he knows the Viltrumites were on their way to execute Nolan, but he hasn't gotten the update that the execution was actually a failure. Remember, there are less than 50 full-blooded Viltrumites left. Oliver jumps in and gives Conquest the old Viltrumite 2-stomp. It's this like anime style kick that I love so much that they always do, just for Conquest to backhand Mark and knock Oliver back, causing our boy to lose 10 of his baby teeth. Technically, I feel like all of his teeth could be considered baby teeth since he, just grows them back when he's rehealing. Conquest starts pulling Oliver like an accordion, and in the worst little detail ever, and I'm mad that I noticed this, it's not blood dripping on Conquest's face from Oliver being torn apart, it's what I think are his teardrops. Cecil teleports in to try and save Oliver, and he can see the beating that Conquest is putting on Mark. It's crazy seeing it from a distance as Conquest is just punching Mark through multiple buildings. Conquest plows Mark through tourists on vacation, decapitating this one woman and massacring a bunch of others. This is similar to Nolan pushing Mark through that train and killing all those passengers in season 1. He crashes through a dude with sunglasses and his dog and kills them both. A little kid holding his mom's hand, they run through him, chopping his arm off. Please stop, someone. I don't even know who you call at this point. Mark manages to free himself and punch Conquest right as Eve shows up to create a shield that he crashes through. Conquest does the Viltrumite hand chop and breaks Mark's leg. His bone is straight up just, sticking out and cracked in half. I can't stand this. Don't show me this anymore. I don't care that this is an animated show. I don't like bones sticking out. He bursts out of Eve's bubble. This is just like in the comics. Eve uses bits of the shattered bubble to form an Iron Man-esque suit around herself. We saw Eve use this same armor in episode 5 when battering Mr. Liu's dragons from the prison. She's clearly been practicing with this stuff, probably in anticipation of having to help Mark fight the Viltrumites at some point. She also used it when she was younger in the Adam Eve special. The sound of Mark resetting his bones in his leg. No thank you. He heals fast, but not that fast. Just popping his femur back in place and getting back into the fight. My boy, take advice from Immortal and just retire. Just leave, just dip out. I'm sorry, world. Save your parents, save Eve, get out of there. Eve is holding it down on her own for a bit in this fight. She increases the density of the air, then makes a mace and hammers Conquest with it, then puts a bunch of walls in a row that he has to crash through, then puts a bubble tight around his little big head. After throwing more stuff at him, Eve creates a giant harpoon and launches it at him. He simply just holds up his hand to stop it. It breaks around him and he starts punching off parts of Eve's armor. He headbutts her face mask helmet, then rips off the rest of her armor on her arms. He punches her in the face, reshaping her jaw, aka just breaking the damn thing apart. Then, like in the comics, he stabs through her abdomen, her entrails, her organs dangle in the wind as she falls from the sky. And our Eve technically is dying. Very much does die a little bit. We also hear Mark calling out for Cecil, someone he's been so angry at since the beginning of the season, and it's so heartbreaking. The scene really hurts.
I need you, Cecil! Please keep breathing.
I think there are a few parallels between this scene and the Glenn death scene in The Walking Dead. Glenn kept trying to call out for Maggie, and I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan was like, "Aw, that's so sweet." Then this lunatic dares to lick Eve's blood off his wrist like a freaking cat. Conquest then says this.
But for whatever reason, and I don't really care why, I was ordered to take control of Earth by any means necessary.
He specifically says to Mark, you did something to piss us, the Viltrumites, off. The reason the Viltrumites are supremely pissed is because taking over Earth has been their main objective since like season 1. They're irritated this one half human, half Viltrumite keeps getting in the way. Though in the end of this breakdown, I'll get into some real spoiler territory from the comics to what I think this really means, why they're really pissed, and why they have to come to Earth. So hear me out then. Spring cleaning doesn't have to just mean sprucing up your apartment. It can apply to your digital life as well. If you're looking to redecorate a website you've already got or build one up from scratch, Squarespace can help put together a polished website in no time at all. Squarespace is an all-in-one tool that gives you everything you need to make a website that looks good and does whatever you need it to do. Every Squarespace website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, so you show up more often to more people in a global search engine results. And with just a few clicks, Squarespace can help you untangle digital payment platforms, making it easy to start receiving payments right away using popular payment methods like Apple Pay, ACH, Direct Debit, Klarna, and more. If you're not a graphic designer, don't worry. Squarespace's design intelligence tool makes it so easy to get your website looking just right. It combines 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise with cutting-edge AI technology. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/newrockstars to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Mark says this sick-ass line.
I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how fast you are. I can see the future. You don't live to see tomorrow.
And this is a very baller line to say, and it reminded me that Mark did see the future where he's alive and dipped and immortal as a tyrant, and I feel like both would have been stopped by Conquest, if he did live to see tomorrow. Mark and Conquest's robotic fists connect mid-punch, creating a shockwave and shattering both men's appendages. Mark is now fighting with a broken leg and a broken hand, but is barely slowing him down as he bites down on Conquest's shoulder. Eve starts to glow, and it reminds me of a mutant having a secondary mutation, similar to Emma Frost developing diamond skin, also reminiscent of the Phoenix Force, always bringing Jean Grey back to life. This reminds me of Alan, who gets stronger also every time he's close to death or dies.
I broke it. Oh, this thing. I bet this is expensive. Oh, God.
Mark beats this dude down over and over into the ground like his dad did to him at the end of season 1. Conquest is like the Viltrumite pain sponge or sin eater. He's doing all the Viltrumite's dirty work and getting more and more ostracized from his people for it. And honestly, actually, no, it doesn't make you feel bad. It doesn't make you feel bad. It's just me. I need to stop sympathizing for this man. Conquest confides in Mark as he beats on him, saying this.
I am so lonely. All the other Viltrumites are scared of me. No one talks to me. No one wants to be my friend. They think I am unstable.
Every other Viltrumite we've seen has looked perfect and undamaged, but Conquest wears his atrocities on his scarred face and mangled teeth. He truly is the most brutal Viltrumite. He even scoffs at the fact that they call him Conquest when everyone else has a normal name. He feels comfortable saying these things to Mark because he assumes Mark will soon be dead. He says, "Take it to your grave." Boy, God, kind of mic drop moment. It was good. It was great. Eve returns, and we later learn this is basically a kill switch, a kind of sort of Hail Mary she can do. We'll get more into it later, but now I reckon Eve is the strongest hero on the planet. That's in my opinion. I'm like, if she can revive herself, but also just destroy a Viltrumite, it seems like we should be really messing with Eve. I'm rocking with Eve because Eve's rocking with us. Mark then lands a blow on Conquest with his non-broken hand. He starts slamming into him until Conquest catches that fist and breaks his hand again. God, this man's breaking every bone. Luckily, his head is fully functioning, baby, and Mark starts beating his face in with his head and lands a few final blows on Conquest. Truly, this would have taken like a psychopath the ability to do this. The pain in both parties would be atrocious. To headbutt a man to death is literally diabolical. This final moment is definitely a Walking Dead homage. Negan smashed Glenn's head in over and over, way too much in that scene until his head and face were a pulp. And it was the same way where it was just the smushes and squelching noises and no soundtrack or other sounds. It was just the noises you could hear. And this is the closest redemption you Glenn stands out there are gonna get, including my mom. This is the only thing you're gonna get. And this all makes sense because Robert Kirkman is The Walking Dead and is Invincible, and he helped on both shows. But also, I'm sure that once they got Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Steven Yeun was like, hey, maybe I could get a little hit in, maybe I can get a little lick in real quick. Kills him, murders him. With Conquest seemingly defeated, some backup finally arrives. Cecil, Robot, Donald, Britt, Bulletproof, Monster Girl, Samson, Shapesmith, Tech Jacket, Knockout, Bolt, and Kid Thor. Then we're at the Pentagon with Mark in recovery. Once again, in a season finale, Mark wakes up in the GDA hospital. This time, he was knocked out for 3 days. We get some backstory from Eve that explains what happened to her after the fight with Conquest.
I was given powers while I was still in the womb, but they put in mental blocks to limit what I could do. But when something really traumatic happens, it overrides those blocks and I can use my powers without any limitations.
She also said it happened once before, and she's been meaning to tell Mark about it. In the Adam Eve special, Eve discovers that her birth mother, who everyone thought died in childbirth when Eve fetus expelled a bunch of atomic energy, was being kept alive artificially in a government facility and being used as a living womb to create more superheroes like Eve. Eve gets so enraged at finding this out that she's able to override the block and erase the officials' memories of ever creating her or her siblings. D.A. Sinclair is working on the the Invincible Reanimen. In the foreground, I think that's long-haired Invincible, going by the design on the neck and the uniform. Oliver, Throwbolt, and the others took out long-haired Invincible, if you remember. In the background, you can also see Mustache Invincible, who was taken out in space by Tech Jacket. Debbie blames herself like Mark always does, but it's not like there's anything she could have really done. She couldn't hide Mark from Nolan or anything like that, and he'd have found them anyways and probably just murdered Debbie and taken Mark. She definitely feels the burden of encouraging Mark to go into the superhero game, not knowing the toll it would take on him or the family. And as far as we know, Nolan never faced any villains as dangerous and destructive as Mark has, because, you know, most of Mark's enemies are Viltrumites. Rex then has his funeral on some secret government property, which is pretty smart so nobody goes and digs up his cybernetic skeleton. Most of the heroes here showed up at the end of the Mark and Conquest fight, but with addition of the Immortal and Duplicate. There are also some civilians who I assume worked at the GDA along with Cecil and Donald, and poor shrinking Ray watches from afar, crying, unable to join the rest of the group. She and Rex almost had their happy ending. Oh, my girl. By season 4, they better be checking on my girl. They better be checking on Shrinking Ray. She's, my baby. Rudy uses an empty robot suit to give the eulogy, and Rudy says it's because he couldn't keep his composure, but it would also probably be super weird to have a clone of Rex giving a eulogy at Rex's funeral. But Rudy also announces changing his name to Rex officially to honor Rexplode's legacy, and Amanda tells the new Rex that she loves him. And I personally find this all very weird. I'm still not okay with this. This feels crazy. Eve tries to say a few words but breaks down, and good old Samson starts to say some nice things about his complicated relationship with Rex, and poor Samson has lost so many comrades over the years. We cut away to Eve and Mark chatting away from the funeral. They're both pretty shaken about Rex's death and acknowledge that even though he was an asshole when the series started, he's actually changed a lot and grew as a person. Rex was Eve's first love. She'll never fully shake that, and Mark is sad too, but just so happy to have Eve alive with him. They sneak back into Mark's room through the window, which is also just very funny that they keep doing this. Eve uses her powers to take off Mark's clothes and leave them folded on the floor, but they glow with this pink energy and seem to be really like melting into a puddle, a possible side effect of some new element of her powers unleashed when she rebuilt herself. And surely this is something we're definitely going to be exploring next season, because they're going to make sure she's got to stay nerfed somehow. Eve is clearly like the strongest person. Like they're going to have to be like, yo, stop melting the world. You cannot melt everything. Speaking of next season, we got a few teases of what could be coming more of in terms of both allies and enemies. The song playing is Every Day is Exactly the Same by 9 Inch Nails, and in the sewers are the Sequid, and they're taking control of a worker. Another attaches itself to a rat to start building a master brain. You'll remember the Sequids are a species of parasitic hive mind aliens from Mars. The last we saw of the Sequids was in episode 6 of season 2 when Mark and the Guardians of the Globe stopped a Martian ship full of Sequids from making it to Earth, while also saving the astronaut Russ Livingston, who Shapesmith had originally replaced in order to sneak his way onto Earth. Problem solved. But except we later saw Russ Livingston barf up a Sequid in his apartment, which quickly took control of him. And we haven't seen the Sequids since, but now we know that they've been building up an army underground, presumably biding their time until they're a strong enough force to take on Invincible again. We can see Russ leading the Sequids in the sewers, still wearing the same clothes from when the Sequid took him over. Battle Beast is picked up in space and he still wants more battle, because of course he does. I don't think our man wants anything else. He's basically hibernating in space with the shredded remains of the Viltrumite he was fighting scattered all around him. And I guess Nolan and Alan, the alien, never really found him after they escaped. In the comics, he's picked up by the coalition of planets led by Thetis, but we haven't seen these aliens in the show before, so I don't know if they're with the coalition. The technicians have rebuilt Angstrom Levy. They want him to find them a new home and say this:
"That is only the beginning of the delights we will achieve together."
This feels very Pinhead in the Cenobites line from Hellraiser.
"We have such sights to show you."
Who again, the technician's voice actor is also Pinhead in Hellraiser. And of course, Cecil saved Conquest's body so he can question him about the Viltrumite Empire. Donald thinks this is a bad idea to keep Conquest around, but Cecil's probably considering all his options now. And it seems like Mark still doesn't trust him, so he's got to come up with some backup plans. But Mark is going to be pissed when he finds out that Cecil did not burn Conquest's body like he told him to. Also, Cecil, this is why I don't like you. You make dumb decisions. You think that man can't get out of there? You think if he wakes up, he can't get out of whatever hole you got him in? Out of my face. Mark is with Oliver in the hospital room, telling Oliver he was right and he won't hesitate to kill anyone who puts them at risk the next time, and this can't be good. It seems like all the lessons they've tried to teach Oliver about responsibility of their powers and the sanctity of life are just out the window now. Mark then says this:
So if anyone else ever puts my family or anyone I love at risk, I won't hesitate to kill them.
and it's just like the final panel of the Invincible comic. Mid-credits scene is Damien Darkblood is using symbols and glyphs on the ground to summon a demon lord. Darkblood is voiced by Clancy Brown, who voiced Cahor last episode and the voice of Darkblood in season 1, and this demon is voiced by the Bruce Campbell. The last time we saw Darkblood, Cecil sent him back to hell in season 1 after Darkblood had investigated Nolan's role in the murder of the Guardians of the Globe. Darkblood tells the demon lord that there's a surface dweller with a power the likes of which they've never seen, and they can use him to restore the demon lord to power. He could really be talking about anyone here: Conquest, Mark, Oliver, maybe even Eve now, if he gets his pronouns wrong, because he definitely uses the male pronouns here. Darkblood does say he has means of conjuring this person here in hell, and I wonder if he's talking about Lensless Invincible, the Invincible variant that Darkwing trapped in the Shadowverse during the Invincible War last episode. This plotline doesn't appear in the comics, so it will be exciting to see where the show goes with this angle, especially if Bruce Campbell will be coming back next season. Other things to look for in season 4, we really haven't gotten an update on Nolan and Alan the aliens since they escaped the Viltrumite prison. What are those crazy cats up to? Also, in Nolan's books, there are still plot points of Nolan's sci-fi books and the reality that they contain some secrets for defeating the Viltrumites. There's Space Racer and his Infinity Ray from Nolan's book The Man with the Invincible Gun. There's also the Ragnar, the alien species from the planet with super strong gravity, making them incredibly tough and resilient. Nolan wrote about them in the Savage Planet Savage Beast book. But we see more Titan or Machine Head next season. While they think they've defeated the Order, we know that Mr. Liu may still be alive thanks to the trusty bodyguard who had his soul of a dragon. And how could Multi-Paul fit into any of this? Because he's still alive and doing something else, maybe not with the Order anymore. We expect to get season 4 sometime in 2026, with the show creator Robert Kirkman telling the Direct this week that the team is focused on getting season 4 wrapped up. Now for the spoiler time, and it's not a lot of big spoilers, it's not super heavy, but it is a little bit of a spoiler just for what I'm expecting in season 4, because I read the comics. I read ahead because I really like the comics. It's very fun. As for Nolan and Alan the alien, if they're following the comics, they do come into play immediately, and their storyline does remind us about the Space Racer and the Space Racer gun, and it is a very fun storyline. It's very important, and it's gonna actually be the biggest part probably of the entire season 4 arc. Though what I also really wanted to speak about was the earlier piece about Conquest and the Viltrumite plans. I want to replay the clip really quick.
But for whatever reason, and I don't really care why, I was ordered to take control of Earth by any means necessary. You did something to piss us off.
It's revealed in the comics that the Viltrumites need to use Earth as basically a breeding hub. Their DNA works 100% well with humans, and since we know there's less than 50 full-blooded Viltrumites left on their last leg, they really need Earth. So by the next season, I expect the rest of the Viltrumites and Viltrum's story to be told, which involves a lot of new characters and some we saw during the 3-day battle fighting the Mark variants. Comment down below your thoughts, what you thought about this finale. Did you really think Eve was dead? Because I did. I'm so glad they brought Eve back. Now we're into the part of Invincible where we are gonna, see some casualties, really close people to us casualties, and I hope we're prepared for season 4. Follow me at Lulu_Clemons, subscribe to all 3 channels in the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thank you, Gina Ippolito and Brandon Barrick, for writing this episode. You know I was doing Daredevil Born Again with Gina as well, so I didn't really have enough time to look at this, but those two have my back always. Are they my William? No, they are my Eve. They are my Mark. I'm just Debbie. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.